I will now hand it over to Anik to take over the presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jeanette. So on behalf of myself and our pedagogical director, Kevin Johnson, who, like many of our professors at the university, is extremely involved in various areas of research and also teaching. He's unavailable today. But on behalf of the two of us, I want to welcome you to our info session about our MBA program. As you mentioned, Jeanette, today is not about admissions, but there'll be another webinar about admissions coming up. And so I'd ask you today to listen to this webinar in a spirit of how can this program both meet your need in terms of learning, but also in terms of the life experience. So we're going to focus on how an MBA program is much, much more than just a learning experience, but much more in terms of something that can be transformative for each and every one of you. So we have one program, but two different forms of the program to offer. Today's webinar is going to focus mainly on the full-time program, in large part because that is the program that we offer in English. Our program, the exact same program, is also offered in a part-time format, but that part-time format is in French only. So the full-time program is a one-year program. It begins in September, so it's a fall start. And there is only one start per year for the full-time program. Our part-time program starts in the fall and also in the winter, so September and January. And that part-time program in French is offered in a hybrid format. That is to say that it is offered partially online, partially in person. But starting in September of 2022, we will be doing admissions for both a fully in-person program and admissions for a hybrid program in order for our students in the part-time program to be able to choose the format that they most appreciate. And so that is for the French part-time program. The full-time program is a fully in-person program, meaning it is at school, no online format for the full-time program. And even this September, with the current situation, we are fully on campus. Students are in class together with masks, but fully in class. And so the full-time program will continue in person starting in September of 2022, our next admissions. So I'm going to do a brief overview of the time involved in doing this program. We often get that question in our info sessions: what kind of time do I need to devote to doing this program? And you'll see that there are many variables that can contribute to the answer to that question. And Mallory, I'm going to call on you to talk about that. So for the English full-time program or the French full-time program, we talk about a program that will involve about 30 to 60 hours of your week. But that's very dependent on two things. One, the amount of time that you invest yourself and the amount of extracurricular activities you get involved in. And we have lots of opportunity to talk about those things coming up. But obviously there are weeks where you're at the beginning of a module, and so you'll perhaps have a little less to do. And then you'll have a week where it's deliverables and exams where you have far more studying. So that's when we start talking about the 60 hours. Just before I talk about the time investment in the part-time, Mallory Yi, how do you think these numbers are representative of the time that you invested? Maybe I'll start with you, Mallory, and then you, Yi.
I would say so, depending on how involved you are as well in extracurricular activities and, how much commitment you want to give. I think 60 hours is really at the top end there. But a 40 to 50 hour week would be about right for most of the time for me, I think.
Perfect. Yi?
Yeah, I totally agree with Mallory. For the MBA, you get what you put yourself into. And for me personally, I was definitely on the higher end just because I enjoy that a lot. So it's the MBA that you create yourself.
Thank you. So absolutely. I think it's a lot about what you invested. I know for myself, so we didn't mention it, I did the program, but it's now been 10 years. So my cohort is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. It's been a while. I would say that the investment of time is about the same, but I'll just specify that we often get the question also, can you do this full-time program when you have children or a family? The answer is yes. I did it with 2 children. Many of your colleagues, Mallory and you, did it with children as well. It's a question of how you structure your time and also the people surrounding you and how they invest in this program for you as well, meaning that it takes a community to help you invest. But I was able to do case competitions and get involved and also really invest a lot of time in terms of the learning as well in the program. So it's absolutely doable. For the part-time program, the French part-time program, We talk more about some anywhere between 15 to 30 hours a week, and that includes the courses. So the structure is Monday and Thursday nights. You have classes between 6:45 and 9:45, and you have approximately one Saturday per month. And that's the part-time program is structured over 2 years. What's most important about our part-time program is that you understand that it's not a typical university course and that you don't have a summer trimester where you're off for 4 months. You're actually going right through this over the course of 2 years with holidays in December, approximately 3 weeks, and then in the summer of about 3 weeks. And obviously for the full-time program, you're talking about the same type of structure in that you don't have vacation other than approximately 3 weeks in December. And I believe you had 1 week in April. And other than that, it's 53 weeks of full-time studies without a break. So in terms of the learning, in terms of course content, what it is that you're studying, there are 3 main phases to the program. So if you're doing an MBA, it's that oftentimes you didn't study business administration in your undergrad. And so there will be a certain number of core courses that are business fundamentals. So you're going over the essence of accounting, marketing, but you're also looking at various things like finance and corporate social responsibility. And so it's quite varied, leadership as well. So business fundamentals will cover the gamut in terms of what the core courses would be for a business program. And for those of you that did do an undergrad in business administration, know that it brings it to another level. So yes, you may see some of the material that you've already seen, but you're going to bring it to an entirely different level. And that's for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is that the people that will be sharing the classroom with you will be contributing to the learning with all of their varied work experience. And so you're not talking about it just in a theoretical manner, but you're also bringing in everybody's experience in the learning. And so that leads to an experience that is above and beyond what you would do in an undergrad. And also the second element that makes it different is that it's seen from a strategic level. So that while you're learning the business fundamentals, you're not becoming an expert in any of them. So you're not going to become a finance expert. You're not going to prepare yourself for working on Bay Street or Wall Street, but you'll be learning how to acquire the language of each of these various functional areas to be able to converse with the people that you're working with in leading to a strategic goal for your corporation or for your organization. And so you're learning those fundamentals with a higher level understanding of how they interact with respect to the strategy of the organization. So it's another level of learning entirely. Following the required courses, you'll have elective courses where you'll be able to personalize your learning. We don't have specializations per se, but you have the opportunity to dig a little bit deeper in different areas. Again, whether it be in finance or leadership, it's entirely your own. And finally, it ends with a consulting project, which is now an experiential course, but we're going to have lots of time to talk about that coming up, about the consulting project. So next, the next slide. This is in one slide, kind of a portrait of how it's structured. So the MBA starts with an orientation week and also an intensive class, which is over the course of a week. And this is always where we get the biggest smiles from the alumni when we introduce this part of the program. Simulation week is a 1-week elective course where you hit the ground running, also known as baptism by fire. But it's a really good way to get a sense of where you and your team are in terms of what the knowledge you currently have already is. In the blue squares, those 4 blue squares, what you're seeing is the 4 core modules that are organized around different topics. And that will take you all the way till approximately the month of March. So from September to March, you're doing the core modules where you're going over the business fundamentals. Added to that is coaching, leadership courses, more of the personal development courses that form a part of the program. And you end your core courses with a small consulting experiential course, which is the HEC Challenge, where a company comes into the school, presents its own challenge to the students, and they compete in presenting alternatives to the companies as to how to find a solution to these challenges. Following that, you have the elective courses, so that's where you personalize and you complete with the consulting project. And the final course of the program, which is Change. So that is a reflective course, 3 days, full-time, where you're thinking about everything that you've learned, not only in terms of theory, but also in terms of personal change. So I'm just going to take a quick minute. Mallory, Yi, if you guys want to talk a little bit, you smiled when I mentioned simulation, but you can talk about other courses too. So I'll start with you, Mallory. In terms of learning, anything you want to share with the people who are with us in terms of what you enjoyed, what surprised you, what you were looking for? I leave it to you.
Yeah, so like many of you, I wanted to do the MBA to kind of improve my management skills for my career. That's definitely what happened, which is great. I smiled so much when we talked about the simulation because it really is a baptism by fire. You start your very first week at school and you are just really thrown into it, figuring out exactly what you don't know. And then the coolest thing about it was that for the entire rest of the program, I called back to it all the time. Oh, this is what I could have thought about then, and that sort of thing. So it really contextualizes what you do and don't know, and then where all that learning belongs. It gives everyone kind of a strategic foundation to apply that learning and to think about it in context, which is really great. Because you'll have colleagues who are from all different kind of career paths, all different industries, who have a hugely varied experience. So it gives everyone kind of this unified base to kind of start from together, really brings everyone together at the very beginning of the program. Yeah, so that's one thing I definitely wanted to share. And then, you know, the foundational courses as well really give you a chance to kind of get on even footing with most of the rest of the class, because I didn't have a BBA. I had a communications degree. So I knew some of the things we learned, but I didn't know a lot of the others, and really being able to get into the same headspace with the rest of the class and kind of understand a little bit more what other industries do, what other streams of learning are, that was very, very helpful.
Yi?
Yeah, for sure. Similar to Mallory, I came from engineering background, so I didn't really know any of the terms or the language that the business world used. So overall, gave me a lot of confidence to be able to talk in networking environment, which again, I never did as an engineer. And then, yeah, back to the orientation week. I finished my program about 3.5 years ago, so I don't remember the project itself. But I just remember us bonding a lot about how tired we were. But again, it was so much fun. And then these people really do become your family for that entire year. The structure right now, it might not make sense to you, but they do flow together. You get to learn the fundamentals, and you apply it in the real world projects. And you get a little bit of flexibility, selective courses, depending on what you're interested in. After learning the fundamentals, maybe something that you already knew you were interested in, or something that you didn't try before, but you'll have the opportunity to go into these elective courses. And then lastly, the consulting field project, where everything just comes together. And then the little tiny square at the bottom right, the personal change. I can't remember when or where, but someone said this program kind of like life-changing. Part of my word, but I thought that was bullshit. But honestly, it was for me. I didn't see it at the time when I was in my MBA, but looking back now, as Anik mentioned earlier, with the diversity of the people and the environment you're in, it is really quite amazing overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's kind of a thread of personal growth and development throughout the entire MBA, and you have an opportunity to think about yourself and your career throughout, and really just reassess where you're going, where you want to be. And then that change course at the end really wraps it up and makes you really think about it. Where was I and where am I now? It's a really great opportunity to rethink your career and your life in context.
It's funny because all of the alumni say it and everybody feels a little cheesy or embarrassed to say it, but it really is about transforming your life. And it sounds insincere, but somehow it always comes back to that. So thank you. Something someone else said the other day, another alumni, was that it helped broaden her perspective. And that she came in with training in one specific area and then came into the program and learned not only about different sectors or different areas of activity, but also about different fields of study, different countries, how business worked elsewhere. She just felt like she left with a much wider vision of how the world works than when she came into the program and specialized. And that's very much the portrait of an MBA, which is a generalized program. It's not a specific program, but rather a generalized program. So you've talked, both of you already, about the experience of working with your colleagues, and that really is a big part of the MBA experience. It's who's sharing the classroom with you. An enormous amount of effort goes into admissions to this program, which, yes, is competitive, but also is extremely focused on diversity. And so there are, for the vast majority of our students, a significant number of years of work experience. But that said, it runs the gamut. So from 3 years of work experience to 15 years of work experience, you have people from all sorts of fields of activity. You see some of the numbers here. Yes, the average age is 32, but for those of you that are on the younger or older edge of the spectrum, again, you have your place. That is but an average. And of course, diversity in terms of the countries of origin is extremely important to our program as well. We want you to be able to learn from the people that are sitting with you. And the example is very simple. If you sit in a team, a certain number of people who all have the same work experience in the same country, then you'll never push your learning to that more significant level, because you won't question any of the knowledge that you already have. No one is going to challenge you on anything that you're emitting as an idea. Whereas if you're sitting in a team and you're realizing, oh, this person has experience that I'd never even considered before, and their perspective is one of value, that's what's going to bring your learning to the next level. So this portrait of the student profile is a portrait of what makes this program a life-changing experience again. And the other thing that I haven't mentioned, but that is of value, is the networking that it provides as well. Because when you leave the program, you now have people around Canada, around North America, but also around the world that you can call on anytime you have questions, anytime you're looking for information. So I don't know if you want to speak, maybe I'll start with you, Yi, about the makeup of your cohort and what value you felt there was to learning in teams and learning in the larger cohort when you were doing the program.
Yeah, for sure. I'll speak about the stats a little bit. I was actually the youngest student in class, and I was a little bit intimidated by that fact, but because of the cohort and where everyone was so diverse, different countries, different backgrounds, different ages, the coolest person in our class was probably Peter, who was one of the oldest guys. So you really get to get the diversity and inclusion and really feel it. Like it's generous. Like everyone's super genuine, there to help you. What was the other question you had, Annie?
Just in terms of the cohort, but also teams. What was it like to go through all of the core courses and the electives, always having team assignments? What kind of experience did you take from that maybe even helped you in your career or personally in terms of your development?
Yeah, 100%. So within teams, there's two things I learned. As an engineer, I'm always around people that are similar to me in my professional career. We think the same way, we follow the same process. And I came from oil and gas background. So again, it's extremely niche. And I came to Quebec, not as much oil and gas, especially Montreal. So I got a totally entire different perspective. I came from a corporate background. My teammates came from ranging from middle-sized company, even startups, and people even started their own companies. So everyone was just so different, and I would never had the opportunity to experience that if I did not do the MBA. So that was very, very different from a professional point of view. Then from a personal perspective, again, coming from a corporate background, you do the same thing over and over again with the same type of people, but with these different people, different ages, different background, different communication, and not to mention culture. So you really learn how to deal with people. And a lot of you mentioned that you want to be a better manager. And through my extracurricular activities and teamwork, you really learn how to do people management, change management. And it's extra challenging because no one's getting paid to do MBA. Everyone's paying to do MBA. So you learn another layer of challenge that you wouldn't really expect in a workforce, because that's your job. You have the authority of being a manager supervisor, but being an MBA, you really have to learn the soft skills. And then you also get the instruction. So for example, during my involvement in organizing the CSR competition, I had a mentor professor who was a PhD in project management. She taught me so much about how to deal with my colleagues that I learned a lot. So yeah, that's my experience.
That's a really good point. But the soft skills that you learn is in part in the courses, but it's how you apply it within your teams where you really start to learn how you yourself act in a team, how you take on leadership and all the rest of it. Absolutely. Mallory?
Yeah, absolutely true. I mean, we had a few different teams through the MBA. So you start by being assigned teams, and then eventually when you get to the elective courses, you choose your own teams. And that was a really interesting opportunity because there's no leader of a team. There's no formal authority on one of your teams. So you just have to kind of figure out how to work together, and you have to set that dynamic each and every time, which is interesting. So you learn a lot about yourself, and you also learn a lot about how to work with different kinds of people. That was a real challenge for me because I'm a very decisive personality, very outgoing. And when I would interact with team members who were a little bit more introverted or more rule followers, we would have to find that common ground to ensure that everyone felt like they were delivering value and also being appreciated in the team. And that was one of the greatest things I learned, I think, was how to read other kinds of people and how to appreciate different kinds of contributions. Yeah. And in contrast to Yi, I was one of the oldest students in my class, and I came in with, I think, 10 plus years of work experience. There really was a great diversity of perspectives, of ages, of cultures, and it was really great to work with so many different types of people and learn to appreciate all of those different perspectives and backgrounds.
And very much an image of what you see in the corporate world as well when you grow up.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So next slide is one of the most exciting. We were talking about admissions being in the fall. And so our next admissions, fall 2022, will also be our new campus. So we'll be moving downtown. Yes, very exciting. The MBA will be moving downtown. The building is already up. It's almost, but the envelope, if you will, of the building is almost complete. And they will be finishing the interior for us to be able to greet our new MBA students in the fall downtown. So it's extremely exciting, closer to the business center, easier for networking activities, for career services. And also we have a dedicated floor. So everything will be happening on the same floor, the classrooms, the student center, our offices, everybody working together. So it's really exciting. And obviously, as you can see from the images, a beautiful new building that will integrate both sustainability, but also modern amenities. So very exciting move that will be happening in September.
If anyone has any complaints about the student council room at that new building, you can direct them to myself and my cohort as we worked on helping to design it.
There should be no complaints at all. So speaking of the Student Association, the student experience is a massive part of this program and is what is going to allow you not only to make the most of the year that you're investing in yourself and in your learning, but also will help you apply some of the learning that you're doing. So we talked about how within the teams you can develop soft skills, but I think a lot of those soft skills also are developed in terms of what you get involved in the student experience. So both of you were extremely involved. You organized the CSR Capes competition that's named here. And Mallory, you were on the Student Association, which you just mentioned. So if you can take a moment just to talk about what the value is in getting involved in the student experience, and maybe just talk about what you feel is the contribution that it made to your experience. Mallory, I'll start with you this time.
Sounds good. Something that I have told so many people, especially the incoming MBAs after I finished, was do it all. Do it all. You're worried you won't have time to do it all. Just do it all. Once you get into the rhythm of the MBA, you're busy, but you're in a momentum. Do everything. Everything is valuable. I didn't do one of the kind of extracurriculars, and I regret it so much. It was so valuable to do all of these different things, to meet all these different people. Being part of the student association was an incredible learning experience, a great way to work with a team throughout the year to, have a budget and manage events and really help the students and make a difference in their actual experience of the MBA, their study experience. And we obviously COVID hit during my year. So we worked on doing the switch from in-person to online, and being able to make decisions and be a strategic leader within the MBA was an incredible experience. It's a good kind of low stakes way to test out the lessons you're learning throughout the MBA. by taking up leadership roles. As well, case competitions, fantastic experience of really being thrown into the fire with a group of people. That was super fun as well. I would just recommend getting as involved as you can. You will not regret it.
Yeah, what Mallory just said, don't be afraid to do it all. I think I did all three of them. I was on the Student Association as the VP of Corporate Social Responsibility. I was the main organizer for the CSR Challenge, and I was part of the GMICC, which is John Most International Case Competition, which is the biggest case competition we have in town. And it really, I have absolutely zero regrets. Like Mary said, you're on a momentum, you keep going, you learn about time management, you learn about prioritization. If you have family, you have kids, you have husbands, wives, you can still do it all. Even the part-time people, you can do it all. It's just, you have to want to do it. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And yeah, with the CSR challenge, it did take a lot of time, but I learned so much, especially the soft skills that you do get in the team environment. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the other people management, conflict management, people are tired, people are stressed. They have a life outside of classroom. You get to deal with the real life situations through these extracurriculars. And then the case competitions, I recommend everyone to do at least one case competition. It's such a unique MBA experience, especially didn't come from business background. For me, I was an engineer. I didn't even know what a case competition was. I think I ended up doing 2 or 3 of them. And you get to learn about real life issues. You get to work on presentation skills. I think with my current job back in the workforce, I am so comfortable making presentations with little to no notice because John Most and the one I did, you get 3 hours to read a case that's probably 15 to 20 pages long. You get to argue and discuss with your teammates, make lots of assumptions, and try to convince these judges what you said is right, even though you have no idea what you're talking about. You learn a lot of these skills during these case competitions. So definitely recommend everyone to try these out. You'll get so much more confident in your presentation, and Toastmaster as well. Just so much to do. Yeah, I recommend.
I noticed someone in the discussion say, can you elaborate on extracurricular activities? And the reality is we could do, 2 hours just on all of the opportunities that you have to get involved. Yeah, I'm really thankful you talked in detail about case competitions because we don't always mention it when we talk about the pedagogy, but an MBA program is case-based learning, meaning that a big part of your learning is around real life situations where you're challenged, and in a team, you have to explore the case, make assumptions, defend your reasoning, and then present a solution. And so that ability to do that kind of analysis and then to present it is a really good preparation, as you said, for the real world as well. And for job interviews, there's a confidence that comes with that for sure. So case competitions is just bringing that case-based learning even further in terms of your involvement. I think the next slide is actually an image to what you were saying, Yi, of the MBA games. And that might actually be your year, is it not? Or is that a year before you? But the MBA Games is one of the activities where the part-time students and the full-time students come together. And so it's one of the opportunities to build your networking experience as well, because now you're meeting everybody who's doing the program. You follow your cohort in your classes, but at the same time, in parallel, there's a French cohort that's doing the full-time, and then there's part-time cohorts. There are always 4 or 5 at the same time, 6, sorry, there are 3 per year. And so there's all these people that you can be meeting and getting involved with. And I noticed in the discussion that someone asked the question about the MBA Plus, which is a new part of our program where students are invited to do some classes in French to be able to acquire a bit of the French language. And again, you have learning the fundamentals of the French language, but then you have actually using it and using it with people who are using French in the business world, in their social lives. All of the people you're networking with in the program are people, a lot of them in the part-time program are based in Montreal, working in French. And so you have this authentic opportunity to use the language as well. So extracurricular activities will bring that learning to another level again. Both of you seem to have smiles. Mallory, did you acquire any French when you were in the program?
I grew up in Alberta and I live in Vancouver. And I think a lot of the international students were really surprised by this, but the rest of Canada does not speak French. So my pronunciation is still absolutely brutal, but I can write and read reasonably well in French, enough to kind of get by. Which is really a great skill to have acquired. I did use it a lot, and I do miss using it now that I'm back out west and no one knows what the heck I'm saying.
How about you, Yi?
Yeah, definitely. I remember going to networking events or conferences where the presentations are in French. I was definitely intimidated, but definitely missing that environment. It's great.
So just before we move on to a question period, we're just going to talk really quickly about some of the experiential courses. So we're going to talk about the consulting project. And I think on the next slide, we actually have an image of one of the consulting projects, if I'm not mistaken. So you have consulting projects. This is an image of one of the teams that was working. You also have a course, which is an experiential course called the Creative Destruction Lab. The Creative Destruction Lab is a collaboration here with our Executive Education Center, where you're working with startups in AI and investors in helping those startups within the incubator move forward with some of their business plans. And that is actually a accredited course, but that is fully experiential in nature. And you also have HEC Challenge, which I mentioned earlier, which is when the company comes in and presents its mandate to you. So the consulting projects on the next slide will have a bit of a summary of what they can look like. So it's extremely varied. We work with organizations across Montreal and sometimes outside of Montreal. We've had projects in Spain, we've had projects in New York. The majority of them, though, are local. And so they run the gamut from strategy projects to marketing projects. I don't know if either of you want to talk about your consulting project and how you felt it was of value. I always talk about mine because it was, for me, an extremely different experience. So I came from teaching in healthcare. You couldn't get more public sector than that. And I ended up doing a mandate in lean operations management in aeronautical engineering. And so completely different from anything I'd ever done. And yet I call on that experience all the time in my current role because my role is very much operations management. I run a program, but I'm running the operations of this program and the team. And so I use what I learned within that context every single day. So really an opportunity to challenge yourself as well to do something very different. Mallory or Yi, I'll start with you, Yi, and then Mallory to talk about your project.
Yeah, for sure. We're talking about the final consulting project?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So you get to choose the company that you want to work with. And with me, I was very selfish and I want to go into energy sector. And I was the only girl on my team that had any experience in energy or any experience in engineering. And however, it's amazing how you get to learn and you get to work with people from different backgrounds. So I had such a great time, and you really do get the real life experience. Like with all the cases that you get in your classroom, the data is presented to you. But whereas in a consulting project, you have to ask for the data from the client. So sometimes the clients don't want to give you the data, or you want to ask the tough questions, but they don't want to give you the answers to these questions that they don't want to kind of like reveal. So you get to deal with these things that you would not be dealing with in a classroom environment. And at the end, we were able to present our proposed recommendation to pretty high VPs of the company that we had at the time. So it's very rewarding. And I know some people that was able to network with these clients and continue the discussion further even after the project has ended. So it's really, it's just an amazing opportunity to really apply everything you've learned throughout the year and then continue to grow, and even, network with the industry professionals.
We joke sometimes that it's a 5-week job interview because some students do end up working for the companies. And so what better interview than to work for the company for 5 weeks? Mallory?
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the case with my group. One of my teammates ended up working with them and it's still working with them now. I entertained an offer from them as well. So it was pretty exciting. So my priority with the consulting project was to work with people I hadn't worked with in the MBA, but who I really admired and respected. So I was group first, and then we all, voted on which projects we were interested in. We ended up getting our first choice. So we did a user experience project for a environmental software startup. And it was so much fun. We had to scope it ourselves. Yeah, we had to ask for the data we needed, like you said. We had to learn a ton about the fields. It was incredible. None of us really had experience in it. So it was a great learning opportunity. And we were so proud of the work we did. I think we worked harder, than some of the other teams. We were just so passionate about it. And of course, I chose a bunch of high performers for my team. But we ended up having such a valuable experience, and I learned a ton of new things. It was truly incredible. And I think we all improved our presentation skills, our ability to scope projects and drill down to really the most important information, to strategize. Yeah, really, really incredible experience.
Neither of you mentioned it specifically, but inevitably there are people interested in MBAs who are also interested in consulting. And the consulting project is an example of what consulting is like, what the field is like. You said asking the tough questions, digging down for the data, forcing a company to understand that if they don't share the data, you can't go further in analyzing what it is they want you to be looking at. So it's a consulting experience very much like the real world. All right, I think we're at the point, if I'm not mistaken, on the next slide where we're going to be talking about questions. Oh, just before we go to the question slide, this is an image of campus abroad. So unfortunately, see, I lost track of the idea of campus abroad because of COVID. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it over the past couple of years, but campus abroad is a course that exists within the program that we're really hoping is going to come back again this year if COVID allows it, where students do a 3-credit course that involves travel overseas to another country, along with a professor where they meet with professionals in various industries and basically learn about how business operates internationally. So some of the destinations in the past include Russia, include Japan, which is what you're seeing in front of you, Mumbai and Dubai, basically all over the world. There was a project to go to Vancouver this year, actually, Mallory, because we thought that international travel wouldn't be possible, but local travel would be. Unfortunately, we weren't able to move forward with it because of COVID restrictions that were implemented. But it's an opportunity, again, it's an experiential opportunity where you get to live the experience of learning and not just be in a classroom learning. So if I'm not mistaken, the next slide is the question slide. So Jeanette, if you don't mind, perhaps sharing with us some of the pressing questions that participants have right now, just before we move forward to the career slides.
All right. Thank you, Anik. Well, we've got one question that the person is asking, what sets HEC's culture and program apart from other schools in Canada? And I think Mallory and Yi could maybe talk about what your thought process was when you were searching for schools, what it is that you found that was unique or set HEC Montreal apart.
Okay, I'll go first. For me personally, I was very focused on looking for a 1-year program only because there is the lost opportunity. You do have to pay for your living. You don't get paid through your work for that 1-year time. And at the same time, I also want an immersive experience. I want to be full, and I wasn't which is why I didn't do part-time versus full-time. So that was one of the things I chose at HEC Montreal. And secondly, a few of you has asked about the French experience. I grew up in Ontario, so I did take French throughout high school, but I still want to be better at it. So that's another reason I chose HEC Montreal. I want to be immersed in an environment where you're kind of forced to learn some French, especially networking events. You have to learn some little bit of basic French skills. I did get to do that as well. Then thirdly, one of the reasons I chose HEC Montreal is the city. It was just so much fun. I was working in Alberta, and I miss that, not the party life, but the social life outside of the classroom. And there's just so much to do in Montreal as well. And it's so easy to get around, especially if you're an international student. The city is super walkable. You don't need to have a car. You can have a car if you want to. So living was also very convenient. Cost of living is much, much cheaper than many other great MBA schools. And then not to mention, lastly, the HEC Montreal ranking. I did look at the rankings from different reports as well. For the ranking, for the diversity, for the quality of education, I've never felt so cared for by the administrative team. Whenever I go to the MBA office, I felt really good about going. I didn't feel like I was bothering them. Anique was there when I was there. She was always happy. She was always smiling. The whole team is there to help you, to make you a better person. So overall it was amazing.
Yeah, agreed. I think, my number one thing was to choose a top school in Canada. So I wanted a top 5. I think when I was searching, HEC was number 3 in the country. And then as well, I was funding my own MBA out of pocket. And I didn't have, a large amount of savings to call on. So I wanted to find a program where I was going to get an excellent education, but I wasn't paying double, triple, quadruple the price just for the name of the school. And then the 1 year was really enticing as well, because like you said, I was taking off work. I really thought that a part-time program would be challenging to be working full-time and then also doing 15 to 30 hours of school every week. But the full-time program really, really called to me. So those were kind of my reasons for choosing it. And I really wanted to be in Montreal. To be honest, Montreal is, I think, the best city in Canada. I mean, I live in Vancouver. I love it here, but Montreal is so charming, has such culture. It is an incredible place to live. And I love that I got to spend 14 months living in that city, surrounded by the French Canadian culture. It was truly incomparable.
So Mallory, you asked the question. Our latest ranking is actually number 2. It came out this week. So Business Week's latest ranking as number 2 business school in Canada. Yeah. And so the value proposition, you both alluded to it, is absolutely unbeatable, whether it be the cost of living in Montreal or the cost of our program specifically. It's hard to beat in terms of the quality of the education that you're getting and the price that you're paying. So most definitely. And I would just add to the culture. I think you mentioned it, but there is very much a personalized culture. And yes, the MBA office is very much there and working to make your experience the best possible. But beyond that, small classrooms, small classes, your professors who actually correct your work, which is something we don't see in all universities, where the professors are not asking for their TAs to be getting involved with the dirty work, but the professors themselves are getting to know you personally and looking at your work and giving you feedback on your work. So I think that part of it is also part of our culture, to have small personalized classes. And in terms of the MBA culture specifically, I would say very much a culture based on generalized management, general management and strategy, where our expertise lies. And so, yeah, definitely a personal experience, no question. In terms of careers, just to make sure that we have time to touch on this before we have to finish, so we can maybe answer some more questions after we talk about careers. Most of the time when we're considering doing an MBA, it's because there is the career ambition behind that. And it's not always a perfectly defined career ambition. Sometimes it's, I want to explore, I want to learn more, but I know I want to move forward. So we recognize that. And as a result, there is someone who is in place within the MBA team who is dedicated to working with you on building your career experience. The picture here is Jade Monpetit, who is currently in the role and has been with us a couple of years in the role. So Yi, Mallory, I think Mallory, you knew her at the end of your program. Yi, it was someone else who was in the role when you were here. So that person is dedicated to making sure that everything is in place to allow you to bring your career to where you want it to be, whether it's through workshops or individual meetings or recruiting events on campus. And so very much, again, a personalized effort in trying to help you build your career. But I think the most important thing about career services is how you use the MBA and leverage that experience to bringing your career to where you want it to be. So Mallory, Yi, I really would love to hear both of you talk about what your expectations were, what your thoughts were. Did they progress as you went through the program? Did the MBA program per se result in what you wanted it to do for you career-wise at the end of the program? Mallory, I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah. So I was kind of at a stagnant point in my career. Wasn't really sure where to go, what to do. I wasn't making very much money. I felt kind of unappreciated and like I had this untapped potential. I did the MBA, and to be quite honest, I had a few like existential crises about my career through the process, where I was really unsure where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. I did all sorts of vision boarding, and like I did a thing where I put all of my different options and thoughts on Post-it notes and then spread them out on the floor. Anyway, so really went through a lot of soul searching. But you know what? I ended up exactly, I think, where I need to be. I discovered what my strengths were. I learned how to talk about them. And then I found a career where I built on my past experience, but pivoted. And I'm in a much stronger place now. I'm appreciated. I'm making a ton more money, which is always really nice. It's always something you want after the MBA. Yeah, so I really think I did achieve what I wanted. I have a very clear idea of where I want my career to go and how to get there. And Jad was actually really helpful with that. We did a couple of sessions toward the end of the MBA where I chatted with her about my resume and about my goals, and she really helped me direct it and figure out how to talk about myself in the way that would help me get where I wanted to be.
Perfect. Always more challenging when we're pivoting as well, career-wise. Yi?
Yeah, for sure. I was still early in my career, but also similar to Mallory, I felt like I was not completely happy. I felt like I could do more. There was so much potential, but I didn't know what to do about it. And again, I knew I wanted to work with people, but I didn't know how to work with people. So that's one of the reasons I chose an MBA. So my expectation of MBA was after 1 year, I'm going to know exactly what I'm going to do and how to get there. Unfortunately, I did not get there because I found out that I'm the type of person that's going to always evolve, always going to pivot, always going to want to evolve. So the skills I learned from MBA, the key skill that I learned from me is that I'm always going to be asking the question, am I happy here? Is this what I want? And it's a continuous process. And I'm going to carry that with me for the next 20, 30, whatever, how many years I want to work for. And so I graduated 3 years ago. I've been promoted 3 times in 3 completely different positions. And like Melanie said, I think I'm exactly where I need to be. And so that's what I learned from the MBA.
What I like to hear from both of you, and I think is really important in terms of career and MBA, is that it's not about the job you get right after you leave the MBA. It's often about the plan you make for yourself long-term as well. So that often MBAs are evaluated on ROI 6 months out, 3 months out. Sometimes 3 months out, you've decided to take a break and just digest everything and keep doing those vision boards. And sometimes you have taken a job right away. But ultimately, I think the best ROI is when you do your MBA and then 5, 10, 15 years out, you look back and say, how did it help me get to where I want to be? So it's not always immediately after, but sometimes it's a few years down the road. And to what both of you were saying too, I think it's also about how it changes you as a person in order to manage that career. I think you become far more proactive in managing a career and you build confidence in managing that career once you've done an MBA. So some of the employment statistics, and I'm glad I did the caveat before we look at this slide. So these are some of the numbers that come out of our employer survey. We survey students 6 months out of the program and have a look at how their career is going at that point. But again, it's really important to say that although these numbers place us very much in the running in terms of how other MBA programs post their career services as well, I think it's important to note that it's also about career progression. It's not just about what happens immediately when you leave the program. In terms of some of the industries represented, oh, my apologies, I see this slide is in French. So the purpose of this slide is really to give you a sense of who you're networking with, because a lot of the MBA is about career progression, but also about pivoting. And so it's about learning about various industries and then being able to reach out to the students in your program in those industries to be able to get a sense of, those interviews where you're not looking necessarily for work, but to understand what people are doing in other industries. You're curious about this, you want to learn more. Well, we're living, working, experiencing this program with these people is going to create that network for you to go out and get more information afterwards.